Welcome to Fourth Place, your place to learn about U.S. geography, new urbanism, transportation, and city planning. I have something pretty special today. I'm kicking off a pilot series where I visit new cities and relate to you what I observed during my time there. I'm going to be documenting everything new urbanism, transportation, city planning, and more, highlighting things from historic districts to mixed-use developments, and on the rare occasion, the depths of suburbia. In this series, I only plan to spend about 24 to 48 hours in these cities, so without further ado, here's everything I found as an urbanist in Sacramento, California in 24 hours time. I started my trip by taking off from Hollywood Burbank Airport on a Saturday morning bound for Sacramento International Airport. And after one of the smoothest, shortest, and most scenic flights I've ever taken, I soon arrived in California's capital city. You know, I've always wondered why Sacramento was chosen as the capital of the nation's most populous state over, say, San Francisco or San Diego. And during my visit, I actually found out that the city serves as California's fourth ever capital city, following Vallejo, San Jose, and Benicia, which all held the title prior to 1854 when Sacramento took over. The first thing I noticed, especially from someone who travels out of LAX or Burbank Airport on a regular basis, is just how nice Sacramento's International Airport is. It looks like they scrub this thing down clean every day and night. And wow, an existing people mover? What a treat. Won't find that in LA, not yet at least. Anyway, I soon found myself at perhaps the emptiest rideshare station I've ever seen at an international airport, hopping into one of two Uber rides I used during this trip, since Sacramento's light rail has yet to expand out west into the suburbs, where the airport is located. Hopefully they can follow through in their planning and implement that in the years to come, as the airport is roughly 15 minutes north of downtown in an area rapidly suburbanizing. Like I said, the city is currently in its planning phases of extending their light rail service to the airport via its Green Line. Sacramento likes the color-coded system for their light rail operations, by the way. And yes, California's capital does indeed operate light rail, and recently got some new toys added to their fleet too. More on that later. Something unexpected riding through downtown is the wave of, depression? I don't know, it kinda seems dead, vacant of any meaningful foot traffic on a Saturday morning in October. Granted, it was well above 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, but it's almost as if the city completely bulldozed any infrastructure and civilization in the Capitol Mall/downtown area and built a shopping mall in its place, kinda like many other dying 21st century American cities. Oh, that's exactly what they did, huh? More on that later too. Alright, not a great first impression, but soon enough, I was dropped off at my jumping off point in Midtown Sacramento, 19th and Capitol to be specific, where I was met with a little tease of what was soon to come. Also in Midtown is what the city is dubbing the Handle District, due to the way Capitol Avenue sort of resembles the Panhandle to the Capitol State Park grounds Pan, at least on a map view. I don't know, bit of a stretch there, Sacramento, but it's still early in the video, so I'll allow it. Turns out this city has a couple of creatively named business improvement districts, including the aforementioned. This sort of thing allows the city to collect a 1.5% tariff on food sales from restaurants within the districts to support district-wide projects such as security services, street cleaning services, new streetlights, bike racks, and improved biking infrastructure, which there was an impressive amount of within the Handle District. Notably, the district is full of protective bike paths and storage right there on the asphalt, which is a necessary addition for drawing in more people and less cars to the area. Being in the Handle District, you kinda get a sense that this place prioritizes people and bikes over cars. There's a lot of miscellaneous bike signage too, which you just love to see. And I was even pleasantly surprised to see this pedestrian protection in the way of these refuge islands. It's honestly a great place to be as a pedestrian, and we're just getting started. Walking around the Handle District and Midtown in general, you kind of get almost a southern vibe. Something about the street lamps coupled with the overgrown trees and grandiose Victorian-era homes, it's quite a trip. Like low country South Carolina meets turn-of-the-century California. It's peaceful, for the most part. You don't really get a sense that you're walking distance from a major downtown. It's almost suburban feeling in that way. If only all suburbs felt and looked like this. Another thing urbanists can appreciate about this part of Sacramento? The adaptive reuse. I saw a ton of 1920s to 1940s infrastructure living a new life. A 1920s era auto dealership renovated and adapted to accommodate 4 restaurants, loft housing, and architecture offices. If you caught my video earlier this month on San Diego's Liberty Station, you know just how much I love this sort of thing. So after a bite at a local brunch staple, I found myself walking north along 20th Street and stumbling right into one of the city's largest farmers markets. I kinda love moments like that. Just doesn't happen in suburbia like it does in these Midtown areas. And seeing this amount of people when it was literally 100 degrees outside was kinda shocking too, in a good way. As you can see, the trees are old and provided much needed shade, making for an overall pleasant stroll through local small business pop-ups, perusing the food, flowers, and gifts. That was until all the civil people were interrupted by some yelling and screaming coming from a rather hostile junkie, which I won't show here. I mean, the guy was covered in dirt and literally threatening just about everyone, women and children included. Bit of a theme in this video, and unfortunately in this city as a whole. But I mean, what did you expect? It's the capital of the state that allows the most of this kind of activity to go on without punishment. Sad to see that the locals by and large acted business as usual towards it too. The guy was flipping trash cans over and punching the air around everyone who didn't keep their distance. If you watched last week's video on downtown Los Angeles, you know just what I think needs to happen to people who do this. It's really not okay that this has become the new normal in many parts of California. But tomfoolery aside, it was a mostly pleasant and great time exploring the Handle District and Midtown. I saw a ton of new mixed-use developments popping up all over the place too, especially along L Street in the Midtown area, serving as valuable infill for a growing part of the city, transitioning it into a more robust commercial district on the whole. It's very architecturally diverse, in a good way. Plenty of adaptive reuse, like I said, and some killer coffee shops filling in some of those spaces. I'm all for it. But after all that, I only had one thing in mind. I wanted to see the Capitol. And there she was. Definitely one of the most Capitol-looking capitals in the US by my standards, probably because it's the state capitol building that resembles the federal capitol building closest. Surrounding the Capitol is yet another work in progress, California Capitol State Park. But as for the building itself, sadly, it's closed on the weekends, so I couldn't explore the inside, nor could I get as close as I wanted to, on account of this flag-wielding group exercising their First Amendment right. In any event, the state capitol building is a stunning sight to see in person, and other than the construction, so is the state park that surrounds it. But across the street, I wandered into one of the few government buildings open on this Saturday afternoon in search of somewhere to fill my water bottle. And wouldn't you know it, I found myself inside one of the most beautiful building interiors in the entire state, the Stanley Mosque Library and Courts Building, home to the California 3rd Appellate District Court of Appeals. The building was built between 1922 and 1928, and has some stunning features, including this beautiful spiral staircase, this stunning roof detailing, and an old-timey elevator that could barely fit more than 4 souls at a time. Just look at this thing. Too cool. But like I said, I was there on official water bottle business. However, I was foiled. Apparently this water fountain was too historical for modern-day use. Wow. I can't even begin to imagine what kind of history this thing has seen. All the Harvard law degree mouths. Fascinating. I also found this thin custodian door, the width of about 1.5 wet floor signs, but thankfully, eventually, I found my non-historical water fountain. Check back in like 50 years though, it'll probably be on the National Register. Hey, there's the light rail. I wonder when I'm gonna get to ride one of those. So far, the city has been surprisingly walkable despite the temps. Don't worry, light rail footage is just around the corner. After the Capitol, I continued past state government building after state government building. This section here is very Art Deco, and if anyone was wondering, here's where you throw your rotten tomatoes. And here's where you get them. Soon enough though, I stumbled upon this mystery. Sacramento's Japantown. Huh. As far as I could tell, there's nothing around here other than government and corporate buildings, all seemingly built one after the other in like the same year. Surely this part of town, the center of downtown in the Capitol Mall, in between the Old Town Waterfront and the Capitol, existed before 1975, right? Well, as it turned out, during World War II, after the Japanese bombing on Pearl Harbor and subsequent internment of Japanese Americans, Japantown was basically cleared of most of its residents by way of forced relocation. By the 1950s, Sacramento City Council approved a plan to demolish Japantown in its entirety by first seizing property through eminent domain and carrying out a Capitol Mall redevelopment project, which leveled a roughly 15-block area to make way for new offices, businesses, and parking structures. Naturally. By 1960, Japantown was physically erased from Sacramento, resulting in the modern-day ghost town you can experience in the center of downtown Sacramento on any given weekend. I mean, you wouldn't know if you were walking in October 2024, October 2020, or October year 1. What remains in Japantown is this beautiful mural covering some of the last Japantown ruins. And yeah, it's pretty crazy seeing ruins of a destroyed civilization in the middle of the state's capital. Apparently, Japantown was one of the largest Japanese communities in California, with a bank, movie theater, newspaper publishers, billiard parlors, restaurants, and general goods stores. If you're tall enough, you can just barely peek through and see the ruins of Japantown behind the mostly opaque fencing. As far as I could research, nothing is planned for the empty site as of 2024. My next stop was almost just as depressing, only for a different reason, and it was Old Town Sacramento. And to my fellow urbanists, you might want to sit down for this one. In order to get from downtown Sacramento to Old Town Sacramento, one has to walk underneath the 12 lanes of highway that make up the 5, the 99, and the 16 freeways. Just a tip, would not recommend walking here at night, just based on how sketchy it was at the 4 p.m. hour. Probably not a place you want to be in the later hours of the day. I wonder, did it ever cross city planners' minds to maybe put the highway underground and the pedestrians on top? Maybe turn the whole thing into a public area or park where people can exist in the sunshine and open air instead of this sewer-like pedestrian experience? Crazy thought, I know. Emerging from the depths, though, you're immediately met with quite the scene here. Kinda like you just walked through a portal to the past. If, in the past, Old Town Sacramento was a big old tourist trap. That being said, this place does have a few hidden gems if you look hard enough, but they're not going to be found on the main streets. First things first though, Old Town Sacramento is officially branded as the Old Sacramento Waterfront, and for the most part, it's a pedestrian-friendly sliver of the city, cut off from the rest of civilization by, well, you know. It was surprisingly lively, in parts. Others, not so much. Had a great iced tea at a Blueprint coffee project while charging my phone, and wandered around some impressively well-kept and restored Victoria-era buildings. Man, am I glad the gold rush happened when it did. We got so many great pieces of architecture from that time period in America. This one, the B.F. Hastings Building, is a National Historic Landmark and acted as the western terminus of the Pony Express, as well as the first location of the California Supreme Court. This one here, the Lady Adams Building, is the oldest non-residential building in Old Sacramento. And here's something the history buffs watching will enjoy: a modern-day landscape of this famous illustration documenting the Great Flood of 1862, the largest flood in the recorded history of California, Oregon, and Nevada. It inundated much of the western U.S. for a time. Quite the contrast, and is a testament to the city's long-standing rehab and revitalization efforts in the Old Town district. Though there are more vacancies than you'd like to see, especially for an area brimming with tourists. This sort of thing signals to me that maybe people are getting tired of the tourist trap model and looking for something more rich and authentic in their cultural pursuits. I know I am. Parents, smart ones anyway, want to take their kids to places like Santa Fe, St. Augustine, and Old Sacramento to learn about the past, not to visit like 7 candy stores and a Joe's Crab Shack. I really want to make a video about why I think American developers have historically been so obsessed with turning their most historic parts into tourist traps, but the topic makes me angrier than I'd like to admit, so y'all might have to wait a while for that one. It's in the pipeline though. I do like the old rail infrastructure here, and you can see a lot of it in the California State Railroad Museum, which was closed by the time I could make it to the old waterfront. It was pretty cool to see some of these old things still running though. You can tell people here care about their old toys. This building, adjacent to the museum, is the Central Pacific Railroad Passenger Station, a reconstructed version of the original western terminus of the first transcontinental railroad in the US, the Pacific Railroad, showcasing what the station might have looked like around 1876. Most of the buildings in the old waterfront, though, are originals, as the area boasts 53 total historic buildings. But on to one of my favorite parts of the visit, getting to walk around the picturesque Tower Bridge, spanning 737 feet in length across the Sacramento River. Man, this thing was really cool to see in person. It looks well maintained too, which is nice to see. Additionally, the Riverwalk area around the bridge is quite nice and peaceful too, at least when I was there, and there's plans in the works to make this part of Sacramento into a major draw for urbanists and walkable neighborhood enthusiasts alike, with the recent formation of the Bridge District. From the US DOT's website, the Bridge District is planned to be a waterfront-oriented, urban, mixed-use district located along the West Sacramento side of the Sacramento River, sitting adjacent to downtown Sacramento with the capacity to provide jobs and new housing for West Sacramento residents. The district construction began in June 2010, and its infrastructure is sized to a maximum build-out potential of 12.5 million square feet of residential, approximately 5,210 units, and commercial development in the way of 7.29 million square feet of space. As of 2024, at least 6 residential projects are complete, with a few in planning, including one that will house a large riverfront beer garden, food, and event pavilion, as well as a large public art installation. Really, this entire former industrial area surrounding the old waterfront is ripe for YIMBY development, which will, one day, hopefully reinvigorate the city in some meaningful ways. In due time, all of these vacant parcels will be transformed into transit-oriented, high-density, mixed-use, river-oriented development, and I hope to check back on it when it's all said and done. The Bridge District, roadways, and roadway frontage zones have all been redesigned to support pedestrian, transit, and bicycle mobility, and make it a priority to create a walkable pedestrian environment. The centerpiece of this developing district is, without a doubt, their minor league baseball stadium, Sutter Health Park, home to the Sacramento Rivercats, the AAA affiliate of the San Francisco Giants. It's the off-season for minor league baseball though, so I didn't get around to catching a game. But as time passes and more redevelopment takes place, this place is shaping up to be one of Greater Sacramento's most fun places to be. One thing I regret to inform you that I did not get a chance to check out during my limited time in the city is its beautiful Amtrak station. Bummer, but at this point it's 7 p.m., I'm nowhere near a light rail station, and I've already walked my 20,000 steps in the day-long 100-degree heat. Time for me to hit the hay, because Sunday was no less jam-packed with urban adventures. Waking up yearning for a stroll before the heat sets in on this sunny Sunday morning, I decided to walk from my hotel here on the Gold Line in East Sacramento to the city's largest university, California State University, Sacramento, or Sacramento State to most, or Sac State to an even further majority. As an alumnus of the California State University system, it's always nice when I'm able to visit a sister campus and see what it has to offer, and honestly, I really like the place. Entering on foot via the Hornet Crossing pedestrian and cycling pathway, ducking head under rail infrastructure, I found myself greeted with the university's expansive sports complex. And wouldn't you know it, the 3-time Big Sky champion football team was having their practice this morning. But I had no time for sports. I'm looking for campus urbanism here, folks. And I seem to find something of that nature, only just on the wrong day. Too bad. Looks like this is a stop on the Herky streetcar route. And I use the word streetcar very, very loosely here. Interestingly enough, in 2019, the university piloted a first-of-its-kind electric driverless shuttle service called Ollie, which, for a span of 3 months, joined forces with the Herky streetcar operating along a similar path, using LiDAR, similar to the driverless Waymo vehicles I touched on in my second unique transportation video. Shame that I couldn't see either in action during my visit. But what I did see was something wholly unexpected and very impressive. A miniature Golden Gate Bridge right in the middle of campus, intended to facilitate pedestrian-only foot traffic between the campus commons residential district and university proper. However, the pedestrian-only rule isn't really enforced too tightly during church-going hours, as it seems. Officially known as the Guy West Bridge, named after Sac State's first president, and designed by Ted D'Amico of the Spink Corporation, a local Sacramento engineering firm, this thing only cost a grand total of $636,000. During its planning phase, a suspension-style bridge was chosen so that the towers could be built on land rather than in Sacramento's American River waters. At 1,147 feet long, it was the longest pedestrian suspension bridge in the U.S. at its time of opening in 1967. And in case you were wondering, yes, its general design and color are intended to be reminiscent of the Golden Gate Bridge that stands tall just about 77 miles southwest of Sacramento State as the crow flies. The pedestrian bridge also comes with some toys of its own, including these bike compounds that can be found on either side of it. What is this, Amsterdam or East Sacramento? You love to see this sort of thing. Hidden urbanist gems like this is just the sort of payoff I'm looking for on trips like these. Who would have known Sacramento State University is a pioneer in campus new urbanism? And it's not just the mini Golden Gate. I found that Sac State has some great pedestrian and cycling infrastructure throughout. A real treat during my final hours in the city. After about an hour, I left campus and walked about a block and a half through some not-so-fun car infrastructure and finally arrived at Sac RT's University 65th Street Gold Line station, excited to ride in style on Sac RT's newest Siemens S700 low-floor trains, which were rolled out exclusively on the Gold Line starting on September 1st, 2024. And boy was I lucky, because these things look fresh off the assembly line. Such a treat riding one of these things, 6 stops from 65th Street to 16th Street. Overall, it was a pretty tame ride, mostly thanks to 2 safety personnel riding aboard. It's a shame that these guys are needed, and I just wish we could get to a place in this country and in our big cities where we can build light rail without having to also hire people to keep the peace on board. But sadly, I wasn't really surprised about it when I first saw them. Of course, I was thankful, but the state of Sac RT's light rail stops and stations is pretty bleak. A stark contrast to its newest shiny toys. I found this big pile of junk right outside the 65th Street station waiting to board. Currently drafting a letter to the Yimbies for Harris requesting that they kindly ask their candidate of choice to start enforcing national law so that drugs may stop pouring in through our borders at unprecedented rates. All those orange caps are from hypodermic needles, by the way, for those of you living out in the burbs. Parents in cities like LA and Sacramento now have to educate their kids that you don't want to go anywhere near these things. But yeah, crime is definitely down, and our cities are safe and secure, or whatever they're peddling these days. Please, use your vote responsibly, people. But back to my ride, it was smooth, and I even got to see the conductor's POV, which was friggin' awesome. Looks real high-tech in there too. These new railcars are in great shape, but the same cannot be said for the other lines in Sactown. Hopefully the blue and green lines receive a little TLC soon as well. As I loaded off the rail, I made sure to capture just how sleek these things look rolling westbound toward downtown. And as you can see, this gentleman on the right had never seen a guy pointing a camera at such a thing before, forcing him to do a double take. Same bro. This is the reality of how rare light rail is in the US, people. Sarcasm aside, it was just a short walk to my second to last stop in the city. Another up-and-coming district, or districts, possibly? Technically, this is the R Street district, located approximately 4 blocks south of the state capitol, right along the Gold Line. The district consists of former warehousing, commercial distribution, and light industrial buildings that are situated along R Street between 10th Street to the west, Quill Alley to the north, 12th Street to the east, and Rice Alley to the south. The district's rich history is closely tied to the development of railroads, of course. In 1855, the Sacramento Valley Railroad was granted a right-of-way along R Street, which eventually became the first steam-powered railroad west of the Mississippi. By the early 1900s, R Street had evolved into an industrial corridor with warehouses and commercial distribution centers flourishing along the railroad tracks. Many of such tracks have been built around and are on display in the present day, which rail enthusiasts like myself can appreciate. You know, I do like when these historical district redevelopment and revitalizations include this sort of thing. It's details like these that distinguish and create a sense of story in the environments we inhabit and engage with. Such an underrated and valuable touch, in my opinion. The district thrived through World War I and remained a key freight hub until just after World War II, when truck-based shipping began to replace railroads. After the 1960s, R Street's significance as a shipping hub declined due to the opening of the Port of Sacramento and the shift away from rail-based freight. Though, as you can well see, the corridor has undergone a revival in recent decades. Most notably, and most controversially, the district was home to an 81,000 square foot crystal ice plant and refrigeration center built in the 1920s, which was a significant employer and part of the city's commerce before the area's suburbanization. During the aforementioned decline of the R Street rail corridor, the plant was abandoned for decades and eventually bought by a prominent real estate developer in 2005, only to have the eyesore burned down under mysterious circumstances in 2016, conveniently clearing the way for a mixed-use project spanning the area of 20,985 square feet, with a total built-up area of around 70,000 square feet. Seeing this urbanization firsthand is quite something. The site includes multiple 4/1 developments consisting of residences, ground floor retail, mostly underground parking, and on-site community amenities. Quite the urban revitalization project, if I do say myself. Definitely transit-oriented, with the aforementioned Gold Line situated literally on Quill Alley, a block away. And if you were wondering, it was this hot in Sacramento on October 6th, 2024. Sadly, no amount of misters could provide enough respite from the 100-degree temps for me, though. Fittingly, the area has yet to settle on a single identity, with signs reading the Ice Blocks fighting those reading the historic R Street. If it were me, I'd compromise with either the Ice District or the Refrigeration District and call it a day. Overall, the place is as YIMBY as it gets, and hopefully they can build even further into this empty patch of grass, adding even more transit-oriented, mixed-use development. Hopping on the Blue Line this time, bound for my final stop on this trip. This time, aboard SacRT's older model of light rail rolling stock, a CAF S200 vehicle. After 3 stops, I hopped off at 8th and Capitol and walked about 15 minutes to my final destination, the Crocker Art Museum. Housed in this beautiful repurposed Victorian-era mansion, capping off my visit at this place was a true delight. I only had time to check out 1 floor's worth of artwork before I had to catch my flight though. But what a floor it was indeed. Here is just a little of what I saw. This piece made me wish I was in the mountains. This piece is of San Francisco's Golden Gate Strait before the construction of the Golden Gate Bridge. This piece is of Mission San Juan Capistrano, which I managed to catch a glimpse of in a recent visit to California's oldest neighborhood. So subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that. This piece is of Old Town Sacramento in the 1800s. Peep the streetcar infrastructure at the bottom of your screen. This piece made me thankful I'm not wherever this is. The title was fittingly named The World's Greatest Parking Lot. Nice. And this piece made me want a piece. And just like that, I was back at Sacramento International, riding the People Mover back to the same gate I arrived at the day prior, having grown a new appreciation for certain parts of my state capital, already reminiscing my favorite moments from the past 24 hours. There's definitely still a lot of work left to be done in the capital city, and I do look forward to revisiting sometime in the 2030s. Maybe. So where to next? I'm thinking a trip far away from the state of California is in order. Maybe a visit to America's favorite mouse-themed city? What does Central Florida offer urbanists anyway? Maybe we'll find out in a few weeks, but you won't know unless you're subscribed to the channel, which you can do down below if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it. I really enjoyed making this pilot episode of this new series, and be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed it too, as it helps the channel out a ton. But for now, I'll see you next week, right here, from 4th Place.